kind of go through it, you'll notice the groove. Girls in homeschool. Okay, well, if I'm a girl in homeschool, I'm not male, I'm not in religious school, I am in homeschool, so that's a 1. I'm not in private school, so that's a 0. I'm not male, so it's 0, 0, 0. I'm not in religious school, so it's 0. I am a 1 because I'm in homeschooling. I'm not in private school, so this drops out. This is still 0 times 1. That drops out, drops out, drops out, drops out, drops out. We end up with 2.846 plus 0.002 for homeschools. That gives us a predicted score of 2.848 for girls in homeschool. If we write that out here, well, we know that 2.846 was the predicted score for girls in public schools. Now we're going to add 0.002 to that. So the 0.002 is the difference between public school and homeschooling for girls. Beautiful. Then we just add that to the list. And you see it's slowly filling all out. What about boys in homeschool? Okay, I'm a boy and I'm in homeschool. So I'm a boy, so that's a 1. I'm not in religious school, I am in homeschool, so that's a 1. I'm not in private school, so that's a 0. I'm a male but I'm not in religious school, so that's a 0. I'm male and in homeschool, so they're both 1s. I'm male, so that's a 1, but I'm not in private school, so that's a 0. So this will drop, this will drop, this will drop, this will drop. And we end up with 4 terms again. 2.846 minus 0.147 plus 0.002 minus 0.562. And now you hopefully starting to see the pattern. 4 terms again, but it's the same idea. These two together give us the public school effect for boys. Or these two together give us the predicted score for public school boys. The predicted score for public school boys. Then this is the homeschool effect for girls, and we take that and subtract 0.562, gives us the difference between the homeschool effect for girls and the homeschool effect for boys. So for boys, the total homeschool effect, if a boy is homeschooling, their scores, their GPA is going to go down 0.562 plus 0.02, so 0.56 would be the net effect for boys. Relative to if I'm in public school, if I'm in private, if I'm in homeschooling, my grade's going to go down 0.56. But this is testing relative to the girls, and remember the girls went up 0.002. That's why it's a 0.562 is the difference between us, the boys, and the girls in homeschooling. So this is the degree to which that homeschool effect is different for boys relative to girls. And the t-test for that is going to tell us, does homeschooling have the same effect for boys that it did for girls? Okay, one more. Girls in private school. I'm not male, I'm not in a religious school, I'm not in homeschool, but I am in private school, so that's a 1. I'm not male, not religious, so 0, 0. I'm not male, not home, that's 0, 0. I'm not male, but I am in private school, so that's 0, 1. But all those zeros cancel out, and we're left with 2.846 minus 0.375, where the predicted GPA for private school girls is 0.2471. Again, 2.846 was the predicted score for girls in public schools. Then we're subtracting 0.375 for the private school girls. So 0.375 is the degree to which private school girls have GPAs differ from the public school girls' GPA. That's the difference based on, that's that private school effect for girls. For girls, you take a 0.375 hit. Okay, now we're down to just this last little one we haven't labeled yet. Boys in private schools. So I'm male, so that's a 1. I'm not in religious, I'm not in home. I am in private, so that's a 1. I'm male, but I'm not in religious. I'm male, but I'm not in home. But I'm male and I am in private, so that's a 1, 1. We end up with those 4 terms. Add them all up, and it gives you a 3.151 GPA is the predicted GPA for boys in private school. Again, those two added together is the predicted score for boys in public schools. We subtract 0.375 that's the private school effect for girls. But now we're adding 0.827, which is the difference in the private school effect between girls and boys. So girls take a hit, boys relative to the girls go up an additional 0.827. Okay, so that is the degree to which the private school effect is different for boys relative to girls. So once you kind of see that, each of these kind of in English here, we've written what each of those regression coefficients is doing. And the regression coefficient tells you how big that effect is. It's asking a question. The regression coefficient answers how big the difference is. It answers that question, and the t-test for that regression coefficient will tell you whether this degree, the degree to which or the effect of, it tells you is that significantly different from 0. Or can we assume that it's not equal to 0? I'm sorry, that it is equal to 0. So for the girls, they're the same as the public school girls. Or for the boys, the effect is the same for the boys as it was for the girls. Okay. We'll kind of go through this last, and then we'll take a break. Looking at the coefficient table, here's where we've, as we were just saying, here's all the regression coefficients. Here's the t-scores. Here's the p-values. We have to go back to the ANOVA table, right, where we saw the residual sum of squares for Model 3. I'm sorry, the residual degrees of freedom for Model 3 was 72, because it doesn't tell us what the degrees of freedom are here. But now we can look at each of these regression coefficients and answer is, for that question, that statement about what the effect is it significantly different from 0? So for example, looking at the male effect was negative 0.147, and we see t with 72 degrees of freedom is equal to negative 0.549. The p-value is 0.585. So we could write this out if this was our dissertation. We could write it out that the GPA for public school boys is 0.147 points less than the GPA for public school girls. But that difference is not statistically significant. T with 72 degrees of freedom is negative 0.549. P is 0.585. We can look at the religious school effect, this regression coefficient. The t-score was 0.274. The p-value is 0.785. That tells us the GPA for girls in religious schools is 0.073 points higher than the GPA for public school girls. But that's also not statistically significant. T with 72 degrees of freedom is 2.74, and the p-value was 0.785. So you just have to that's why it's nice to literally write down what each of those regression coefficients is telling us. And then you just plug it in here. Is that difference significant or not? Let's skip that one. I think you're getting the swing of it. Look at the effect for religious schools.
No, this is
I'm sorry. the effect for 0.817. Here we go. Let's look at this regression coefficient, 0.817. Okay, that was the effect of religious schools for boys versus the effect of religious schools for girls. Was 0.817. The t-score was negative 2.161, a p-value of 0.034. So now we're able to say here that the effect of being in a religious school versus a public school is 8.17 points lower or more negative for boys relative to girls. And that difference is statistically significant. So religious schools are more negative for boys relative to the effect for girls. Again, it doesn't tell us. Maybe it's neutral. Maybe the effect for girls was big. It's possible the effect for girls could be hugely positive. The effect for boys is still negative relative to girls, but overall still a positive effect. That's kind of one way people make mistakes sometimes with this, is they'll interpret that as the absolute difference rather than the relative difference of boys versus girls. Let me repeat that one more time. Think about it if the effect for girls was, say, 1.2. And then we subtract 0.817 for the boys, gives you like about 0.4. But it's still a positive 0.4. The effect for religious schools is positive. But the problem is the effect for girls, so let's say this is no effect. The effect for girls is huge. I'm doing my Donald Trump. It's huge. Too soon. To like a 1.2 or 1.2, but then I'm going back 0.8. Tells me, oh yeah, boys are definitely less positive. It's definitely more negative in the negative direction for boys relative to girls, but it's still in the positive range. That can happen, but all the time. You'll often see people will lose sight of that, and they'll say, oh, it's harmful for boys. No, it's more negative than it is for girls. It may still be positive, which would mean it's just less positive for boys than it is for girls. You've got to kind of keep it all in mind. Okay? And you know what? Let's just stop at that point. We'll come back and get into these analytic strategies, kind of step by step. We'll go through this quickly. It's spelled out after the break. It's spelled out pretty straightforward in the book, but just kind of some steps of how to approach looking at interactions in regression modeling. Okay? Let's come back in, how long do we need to go get the coffee?